So up next, I'd like to welcome a very special panel that is going to be conducted by the British Columbia delegation that's joined us. And leading this panel, I would like to welcome Rhoda Campbell to the stage, and I'll get her to introduce her wonderful panelists. So please welcome Rhoda to the stage as she fights through the crowd.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us all. My name's Rhoda Campbell, as Charlie said. And we're all here from British Columbia, Canada. That's on the West Coast. So we have an amazing panel. And I think the key aspect of this panel is that we have some serious veterans in the game and some in game development, and also some new studios. And the aim of the panel really is to let you guys have some insights in playing the long game. And if you've been in the long game for a long time, is to kind of gain some motivation from these very motivated people, and continue to feel inspired. BC has had a game industry since the 1980s. It's number 2 for cluster and industry in Canada, and number 4 in North America. That's in across console, mobile, and in VR. So it's been around for a while, and that's really, it's seen the ups and downs of the global industry. It's seen challenges, and it's seen major highs. And I think maybe we can start with that. Actually, let's start with everyone introducing themselves. Perhaps we can start with Wolfgang. If you could let us know your name, what you do, a little bit about your studio, and then pass it on to Carina. Thanks.
Thanks, Rhoda. First of all, hands up. Who's here from London? England? Anybody not from London? Other parts of the UK? The rest of Europe? Anybody from North America? A few of you. Awesome. Great stuff. I'm Wolfgang Hamann, President, CEO, founder of Koolhaus Games. And I'm pleased to say that last year we celebrated our 20th year anniversary. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's really a tribute to my team, most who have been with me for over 14 years on average. And we started way back when, officially in 2005, unofficially in 2004. And I think the one word that describes Koolhaus and the reason for its longevity is just one word, which is diversity. Diversity in everything that we do. We got into mobile early, before anybody else, and rode that, but we are a cross-platform developer, and in a nutshell, that one word really describes us. Thanks for coming.
Good morning. Hi. My name is Carina. I'm a video game industry veteran of about 17 years. My claim to fame is that I recently won an award for Vancouver for inclusive design leadership. And I run a studio called Simply Sweet Games, which is a female-led studio looking to raise the bar for the games industry, and I can talk about that later in this panel. We are a pre-revenue studio. We're about 2 years into our journey, so I'm going to come in with a lot of my perspective will be about fundraising and how difficult that journey can be, but to not give up. I believe the future for BC and for Canada is that we are a resilient, very highly creative, technology-focused games industry, and I'd love to share that with all of you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Emma Bullen. I'm Senior Director of Partnerships and Platforms at Hippo, which is an idle games studio. We make Adventure Capitalist, Adventure Communist, which I would encourage you to download if the internet was better. I'm joining you today from BC via Lewisham. I'm happy to be an export.
My name is Solon Bucholtz. I'm the co-founder and CEO of LBC Studios. We are in the mobile free-to-play space, focusing on simulation and casual games. We have been around for 10 years, so as Rhoda mentioned, we've ridden the highs, gone through the lows, and figured out how to come out the other side still successful, so happy to share today.
And I'm Tayber Voyer, the CEO of Thinking Ape Games. We make mobile games, and we've been a studio for about 16 years making mobile games, and we're in Vancouver, Canada, but also fully remote, so all over British Columbia and Canada. Got about 100 employees across the world. And yeah, we've been making games for a long time, so happy to share some insight.
Thank you. So actually, I want to start with you, Solon and Wolfgang, if you don't mind. When you started up your studios, what was the wave like that you were riding in the creation of that? Was it an easy wave? Was there a lot of adoption? Can you draw on how that initial drive to build it into something that's lasted 20 years, something that's lasted 10 years? What was the high that you were riding, if it was? Or did you set it up during challenging times in the market? And how has that created the foundation for what you guys are now? So maybe start with Solon.
Yeah, in 2015, part of the reason that we were able to find success was we were clearly focused on the vision on what our game was going to be. We knew exactly what we wanted to build and who we were building it for. The challenge is when you find early success in mobile games is trying to figure out who you are, what's your identity. You find success with a successful game, you build up a studio, you start to scale, and then you realize you have to build your next success, and that's hard. Building games is incredibly challenging. In 2020, if anyone was in mobile games at that time, people were stuck at home and they were playing on their phones, and it was easy to feel success and feel like you were successful. In 2023, the rubber band effect came into play and people started to change their behaviors and started to change how they spent, and we were navigating an ecosystem that was maturing with data privacy laws, and you know, the reality was that it was a tough time to be in mobile games. For us, that meant making difficult decisions. You know, people were coming back to work. We had to downsize our studio and really dig deep to understand what at our core made us successful. The reality is it's a combination of two things. It's a combination of good strategy and product, and it's also a combination of the right people. And people really matter through longevity. It's not just a matter of having good people, it's having the right people in the right roles, and that takes a long process of really understanding who you are. A lot of people talk about culture, but I think I would shift good culture to the word of high-performing culture. And the last few years, when you're facing challenges and you fall down, you know, as a leader, a big part of that is reminding your team of what high performance means in your studio, what you stand for in your values, and be steadfast in what your products are that drive success.
Cool, good stuff. Well, I can echo that for sure. So I have a little funny story that I'm going to try to keep short. Koolhaus got started 21 years ago, almost by accident. I was teaching part-time at a college, and I was working at Radical Entertainment at the time, which was one of Canada's largest, one of the largest independent developers in North America. And I was, in my class, my students got wind that I was leaving Radical, and they asked me to come to a meeting because they wanted to start a studio. They wanted to start a game studio. So I went to this meeting at the college, and there was about 15 of them there, and they asked me if I could give them some advice on how to start a studio. And I got there, and the first thing they said was, well, we heard you're leaving Radical, and after thinking about it, we actually want to join what you're going to be doing next. And I had no investment, I had no money, and I told them, hey, you know, that's the reality of where it's at. And they said, we don't care. And they said that they had found a room in the college that they could use to meet and go through, you know, some game design ideas and brainstorm, et cetera, et cetera. And so those 15, within about a month, turned out to be 40 people, including pretty much the whole staff at the college. And that's how we got started. And there's a lot of passion there. Some of those people are still with me today, 21, almost 22 years later. And I guess this real key to longevity is having people who really care, who are really passionate about what your philosophy is in making games and what your philosophy is in having a company. And it always comes back to that one word, diversity. That group of students who are from all over the world. I had students from Middle East, from Europe, from South America, and it was a special group when it came down to it. So from there we found some other places to set up. At Simon Fraser University, they were kind enough to give us a room. I had a bit of an in at Simon Fraser University as one of the computer science professors there. Steered me to the best students before anybody else could get them. And we hired all those people. I found an investor and put in some of my own cash, which is the usual thing to get things started. And we just went from there. Also, what was a real key to Koolhaus getting into mobile was that I hired a bunch of software engineers who had no experience making games, none. So they didn't know the word can't, okay? The very first demo that we showed at E3 years ago, when E3 still existed, was on an emulator, a Brew emulator on a laptop. I don't know if Brew means anything to anybody today, and J2Me. And so the publishers were impressed by the demo, but they said, there's no way you can do that on a handset. You can't do that. The state of the art in those days was a Nokia 7210, which had like about 64K or something of memory, something really crazy, and a screen about this big. It was monochrome. I took that information back to my programmers and said, everybody's saying that the demo looks great, but you can't render vector graphics on a handset. Well, within a week, they had it running on a handset.
Great.
And I took it back to all those publishers, and that's how we got our first contract, which was with Square Enix out of Japan, and we were the first developer that Square Enix used outside of Japan. And that's how things got started. And it really came down to a group of software engineers who didn't know the word, you can't do this.
Great,
Okay.
Thank you, Wolfgang. So what I'm hearing is it's really about focus, motivation, and passion. And so, Emma, you have developed, Hyper Hippo has got some major partnerships over the years. But you've also taken a massive shift in how you run your team. Both Solon and Wolfgang have talked about the importance of team, importance of that shared motivation. Perhaps you could describe a little bit about your setup and how that's maintained your success, diversified, and how you keep maintaining that success in recent years.
Yeah, that's a great question. So you mentioned the pandemic earlier, and the pandemic, I think it was, it's March, and we had our last day in office ever, and we never went back. So we took everything home on the Friday to practice working from home, and it went really well. And the really nice thing about the pandemic really helped us diversify our team across the country. So where previously, we're in British Columbia, we're in quite a small valley. And we would often find, in my previous role at Club Penguin, team members would come to join the team, but they wouldn't necessarily stay because their partners either couldn't find a role to do within that area, or they missed their family or their friends at home. And so as we moved across the country, went fully remote, we were able to hire people that had the skills that we needed, but were based in different hubs. And so now we have a team that is based both in BC, but across the country, so Toronto, Montreal, PEI, which really enables us to have this diverse staff. And I think they're much more engaged because they're where they want to be. which is lovely. So, I mean, there are pros and cons of working remotely, as we all know, but I find that if you're doing it properly, you can really make the clock work for you. So you have team members that are starting much earlier in the day or much later, and that also helps when you're running partnerships because you have people in different regions that are able to talk to people all around the world at different times as well. So it's really helpful. It's both helped us diversify, but also react quite quickly.
I love that reaction time aspect of it. That's really key, isn't it? I mean, I see that across tech, and I think increasingly games, with all the different sort of solutions that bolt onto games, it's really tech-related in that responsiveness and agileness. Carina, you are setting up your new studio. I want you to touch, if you can, a little bit on how the environment of BC and the culture of BC has motivated, enabled, or maybe brought some challenges as to why you have the mission you have to diversify, to be better. Why has that created a sort of a bed for you to even exist? And how's that going?
What a great question. Thank you. So when I joined the industry, that was about circa 2008. So it was roughly around the time where the housing market, a bubble had popped. President Obama was in office at that time. And in this time in BC, we were more AAA driven. So we saw a lot of big AAA studios with longer development cycles enter the mix. But at the same time, we also saw them start to fold. So from that point, we saw new indie experimentation, new storytelling, more grassroots studios emerge, like fantastic studios like Eastside Games started coming up, Hippo was another great contender in that space. Mobile games became a wonderful genre, a new niche for game developers to start experimenting, exploring. And from my experience, working in that AAA environment, I was always making games for a certain demographic. I went out for quick story. I went out for a nice dinner last night, and there were over 100 attendees and 11 women in the room. And so this has been my whole career. And I'm sure Emma, maybe you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. She understands. So, and this isn't news to anyone who's trying to build a diverse, inclusive, and equitable studio. The point that I'm trying to make here is that the industry has evolved since that AAA environment where a gamer is a certain type of person. A gamer now is your Gen Alpha with multi-race players. In fact, the Global Games report shows us that about 46% of video game gamers all over the world identify as women, but yet there's so few of us making those leadership decisions. And so being in that environment was kind of like a melting pot for me, making games for a certain demographic, not really feeling like I belonged, entering a room and being the underrepresented, even though we're catering to a certain demographic. I thought this was time for us to make that change. Granted, at the end of 2023, as you know, we had major layoffs. We still do. Funding remains a challenge. So it's a mission that I truly do believe in, and the vision overall is to show that we can do something a little bit differently and we can be successful.
I love that fire. And I think, Solon, you touched on that, and I'll come back to you later about really, even in down times, that you still have that fire. Tayber, you run a studio. You've come up through the game industry in many ways, but now you're heading Thinking Ape. Could you give us a little bit of an understanding as to what's moving forward? How are you taking your studio forward with all the changes that are, one, happening across the industry and a little bit happening globally, as far as keeping your team motivated and keeping your studio growing? Just to give a heads up, I didn't give him any indication that I would ask him that question.
I wish I had a really good answer to that. Wow.
What's ahead for you, and what's keeping you motivated?
Sure. So It's a challenging time in the mobile gaming industry. Obviously, we all know that. User acquisition is difficult. Finding new users is difficult. It's really competitive. We're pretty lucky in that we have, some older games that have players who've been playing the games for a long time. So, our games have really, really good live ops, and we have audiences that have stuck around with us for a long time. So that's something that we've doubled down on and focused on in the last 2 years, I would say, is refocusing on our existing user base and our existing players and really championing the player experience of our existing people. So we sort of have this idea that if we acquire a customer, right? So not every player becomes a customer, but when we do acquire a customer, we want that customer to be a customer for life. And given some of our games are 16 years old with people who've been playing them that whole time, it's not, an insane thing to say that these people might be with us for, playing our games for a really long time, potentially for their entire lives. That's the goal. So really making that the vision of the studio means that we mostly focus on our existing IP and our existing games and making them the best that they can be. Video games are like dreams held together with chewing gum and snippets of code. The fact that any game ever gets made and people play it is astounding, but it's also a hit-driven business, which when you say those two things together, it doesn't sound like a great business plan. So trying to make a business out of that is the thing that keeps me motivated, is that I'm a creator, I'm a maker, I'm driven by that. And I think, I can't really see because of the house lights, but I think Josh Nilsson's in the back over there, who used to be one of the founders and CEO of Eastside Games. And my first experience in games was working at that studio. Josh was kind enough to give me an internship, and I got a job there. And within a few months, we launched Pot Farm on Facebook, and it scaled to hundreds of thousands of users in like a week. And that was addictive. Like, that's exciting. When you build something and you see all these people playing it, and there's a whole community that builds up around it, I've been chasing that dream ever since. And every time I've launched a game that's been successful, it just feeds that desire to make something that people want. And very, very fortunate to run a studio in a place filled with people with the same passion. And so that's kind of what we're focused on, is continuing to serve our existing customers and find ways to serve the next generation of customers as well.
Amazing, thank you. That's such a great insight. I think I'd forgotten a little bit about that drive, that addictive drive of successful business. And that's kind of why most of us stay in business or stay in ventures. Solon,
there's a lot easier ways to get rich than making video games.
or not get rich, maybe. Just keep making successes. Solon, could you help me understand, on a personal point of view, your way of staying motivated, and how do you, if you're talking to anybody in this room, we all get up on the middle of January on a dark, because we're in the UK, but in a dark city or town, and we've got to push forward to being creative, to driving a team, or even if we're not a founder, we're still motivating people to build something or maintain something. Could you touch on a little bit about your inspiration, how you stay motivated and inspired?
Yeah. Listen, it's a privilege to be on this stage. We're all lucky that we're still in business. And, when I first started LBC, I was probably pretty outcome focused. I think you mentioned there's a lot easier ways to get rich. But we did have success, and the reality is, there's going to be many times as a leader, and many times for all of you in this room, if you're in the games business, where you probably don't feel like you're winning. And I think we feel it in our teams too. I think you touched on what it feels like when you do find a success. That moment when people are playing with your games and they're engaging with your games, that is a very rewarding feeling. And, in my game studio, we talked a lot about culture and the downtimes. And to be honest, I got it wrong. I thought people wanted to show up and these things matter, so let me be very clear. You want to create an environment of safety. You want to create an environment where people feel welcome. Those things absolutely matter for your teams. But your teams also are creative people, and they want to create things that make an impact, that people play, that have touched others, and they want to win. And when you struggle, you got to dig deep to remind yourself why you show up. So to answer your question, my motivation doesn't always come from inside the business. Sometimes it comes from outside. I'm married, I've got 2 kids, and the reality is I get up every single day because they're my why, and I remind myself of why I get up, and then I remind myself of the people I get to work with. And we are here, with the BC government, and I think one last point to that is, you mentioned there's a culture in BC of technology and people. We are very fortunate. There's a lot of fantastic talent in British Columbia that are looking for opportunities to shine. And I think the reality to be able to build a business in BC, to provide those talented people with the opportunity to thrive and hopefully build games that allows them to grow and grow with us is motivation enough to build a great business.
That's great, amazing, thank you. So this is like to spread this across the whole panel. So maybe starting with you, Wolfgang. A massive aspect of all you guys is your international outlook. You're all here. You've traveled across the whole of Canada and the whole of the Atlantic Ocean to be here. And it's you go on many different trips across the world, which we support. And you partner with people around the world, different publishers, different teams, different collaborators. Could you touch on a little bit about how, first of all, a little bit of your outlook and your strategy to capitalizing on what is available globally to keep your game or your studio going? Let me summarize that question. What are you drawing on from around the world to make you successful? Do you want to start, Wolfgang?
Going to start with me? Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
So, interesting question. It is a global world. I mean, Canada's a wonderful place. Vancouver's a wonderful place. BC's absolutely marvelous. But it's only 2% of the world market. That's the reality, okay? And this is not just in video games. My background is the record business, music business, and it's the same thing for the music business as well. So we in Canada have to look outside to have a successful business. I mean, you can do it with purely, having relationships and sales, et cetera, inside Canada, but that's really tough when it comes down to it. So we're fortunate that we're right next to the US. And, well, I don't want to get into this, but today maybe not so much. But nonetheless, looking at our 20 years, 99% of our revenue has come from outside Canada. And so we have to look internationally. We have to be there when it comes down to it. And this is part of my vision for Koolhaus way back when, is to have a group of very talented people who have that background internationally, who are all Canadian citizens, but their backgrounds are from Asia, from Europe, from elsewhere. And just to demonstrate how unbiased I am about hiring people, as you notice, as Vancouver Whitecaps, I'm obviously a football fan. Well, my English team is Liverpool. Awesome. And I hired someone who's a Manchester United supporter here from London. So we truly are international. We have no biases when it comes down to it. And that's really the key, part of the key of what Koolhaus is about. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Interesting question indeed. So Simply Sweet Games is completely bootstrapped. We rely on the support of our government to help bring us to these kinds of conferences, to help with our branding positioning, and to meet and network with other fine folks globally. Because we're bootstrapped, we're looking to build a sustainable game studio that embodies trust, longevity, and clarity in what we do. So I'm not here to chase trends. I'm here to chase clarity. I'm here to understand the global market from a cultural intelligence perspective. Every place that I go to has a unique culture, and I'm very curious about what types of players dial in to the types of games that we want to make. I'm very customer forward. and focused. So all the players that I get to meet at different booths around the world, super enlightening. So for Simply Sweet Games, this is about broadening our horizons as a newish formed studio and trying to understand what makes this part of the world tick. Eventually, we will grow. And when we do, I'd love to make some more connections here, because there could be someone out here that I would like to hire in the future.
It's a lovely answer. I think when I think internationally, the biggest thing to bear in mind for us is that we can't do everything ourselves, and we can't know everyone, as well as other people do. And so I think it's mostly looking for partnerships with people that are able to say, I really know this region. For myself, I've been outside of London for 16 years, so I always say to my team, I couldn't advertise to British players because I don't know them anymore like I used to, So I think it's really important to look for people that do know that audience really well. Otherwise, you can get really bogged down in researching and trying to find out who your players are. But you can really cut through the noise if you're looking for somebody else to help speed you up.
Yeah, so maybe about 5 years ago, we were acquired by Embracer. So we have studio connections all over the world. And as part of that, we work really closely with Decca Games, which is headquartered in Berlin. And we partner with them on the entire portfolio. And so we have people that we work with across the world. So we also have hired people through Decca in other parts of the world. So we have staff in Bulgaria, Berlin, London, China. So all over the world we have people that we work with. And being remote means, in 2026, it's pretty easy to have people working all over the place. And, video games is a very collaborative type of activity, but a large majority of the work you spend by yourself making stuff. So it's actually a really, really good type of business for remote work. At least I believe that. And so, yeah, we're able to work with people all over the world, and we go visit them. And one thing I've found that is the same everywhere when it comes to video game developers is people make a choice to make video games. Like I said before, there's easier ways to get rich. And recently I was in Beijing, and I was meeting with a team, and they were all young women who were in games, and they all told me, my parents don't want me to make video games. They want me to be an accountant, but I believe in video games. And that passion, I think, is everywhere in games. Like, that's what drives people. You don't get into video games because it's like going to be an easy career and it's going to be comfortable. It's going to be hard, but you are driven by a passion to make things. And everywhere I go, whether it's Beijing, it's here in London, it's in Vancouver, it's in Bulgaria. We went to Sofia, Bulgaria, and met all these amazing people there, and everybody is in this industry because they believe that it's worth it, that we're making something that's important. And it's just entertainment, but it's also video games, and it's very cool.
Yeah, I love the answers. I think the reality is wherever you work, if you're a small studio or a big studio, you often think pretty internally about your people, and that can be local or provincial or for us, nationally. But when you think about globally, and I think about the industry we're in, I think a lot about relationships. This business is really based on relationships, especially in tough times. You'll be surprised how many people outside of this room in their booths that you foster relationships over the years that are going to help you out. They're going to help you out with data. They're going to help you out with whatever it is that you're looking for. And it isn't always driven by transactional relationships. It's often just by showing up, having conversations year over year. And you'll find out how much support's really out there. This industry lives and dies together, and everybody in that room out there wants to take care of each other to see this industry survive. I just came back from an education week, and one of the things I thought about was the word uncertainty. It's mentioned 5 times more this year than last year. And I'm sure everybody in this room feels it. And the reality is, uncertainty is just something you can't actually define. And us as leaders, our job is to define strategy and manage risk. And, if you think about the word globally, how we manage risk is make sure that we foster our relationships with everybody we work with.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. From a personal point of view, my job is to foster relationships for the studios in Europe when they're not here. And so I can totally echo that. And having sort of led the delegation of game developing studios from BC for the past 12 years, I am older than I look. I would say, touching on your point, is that I do the follow-up for all these companies over the years and how they succeed. And one of the things I absolutely love is that they tell me that they randomly met somebody that was doing something fairly random or had figured something out or was developing a new something, and it popped up in their radar, in their thinking later on. So I guess what my point is to kind of summarize a little bit our panel. One, they've been there, done that, and they're still doing it. They're open and curious and courageous. And they're here to meet everybody. So when you're having chats during the rest of the sessions, at the different functions, have a conversation with a little bit more of openness. That conversation doesn't need to be what you're selling or what you're trying to achieve, but just be open, be curious, make the connection in with the real person behind the project. And you never know what will stem from that. And hopefully it will bring you to British Columbia, to Kelowna, to Victoria, to Vancouver. And I certainly like to, welcome you on that journey of yours. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.